right, welcome to Unleash the Potential. Excited. I've been trying to set up this talk with Tom for a while now. So we are guests in his office. He's so nicely invited us in. So we're just going to go through some of the different things. And Tom, the mastermind of PHC and just bringing the whole family together. And I'm going to tell you, like being able to work with him a little bit, one of the coolest things is just from the people to the players. You always know a player that has been working with Tom because they come in, they focus, they do everything they're supposed to do, and they move on from there. And before we get into all that, so thank you so much for coming on.
Well,
Excited. Tom, I wanted to tell me a little bit. How did you get into hockey? What was the when you start playing? Give us give a breakdown.
like most guys in South Jersey at that time in the 80s, and I started playing street hockey. Got into ice when I was, I guess, around 10. Played all the way up through, midget, 1 year junior, and then went into the workforce after that. I was staying involved in the game, men's league, a little bit of coaching here and there. I coached some high school when I first got done playing. And then, as my kids got in the game at a young age, started coaching. So I guess, it's been about 12 or 13 years now, it's consistently coaching hockey.
Mm-hmm. And so, any standouts for yourself? Because I'm sure you stand out to a lot of the players that you worked with. Are there any coaches or just anybody overall that stand out to you that now when you coach that you think about maybe you don't necessarily think about them every single time, but just in general that kind of you think of from when you were coming up?
Well, of course, Guy's, big influence on everything I do as a coach, as a director. He was a mentor, and he played a major role in South Jersey hockey for 25 years. He brought skating to this area. I think when the guys that I played for, in the 80s and the early 80s and early 90s, early 80s through the 90s, hockey was so new down here. It was really hard to find coaches. I think when Guy moved here, he kind of brought, the fundamentals to this area and the teaching of fundamentals. And, he not only to me, but hundreds of coaches, that he taught the game to. And not so much taught the game to, but taught them how to teach the game. So he's probably the biggest influence, but not just on me, but on a lot of guys around here. So he deserves a lot of credit there. But I played for a guy named Bill Silk when I was a kid. Great coach. A lot of the things that he taught us, I still kind of use today. Just basic stuff, little things he used to say. But he was a disciplined guy, no nonsense. You came, you worked, had a respect in the locker room, and another thing that he was big on that I've tried to maintain with my teams is like a good culture. He would cut better players for lesser guys that he felt like, we're going to be good teammates and coachable type kids, and that's something I've tried to do as well.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, like I said, starting off, it's funny, the especially the 05 guys, that I've seen in the gym that have come through from your 05 team. It's funny because they get in, there's 3 words, let's get down, let's get everything done, clean up, everything out, and out. And it's just it's like, that's a Tom Bunting influence right there. It's really cool, man. Awesome. Okay, so, and with all that, so you said you played, you went into the workforce. How did you transition back into coaching and just kind of?
So I came back here, I guess, 2008, 2009, did some stuff with Guy. Again, my kids started playing. Beyond just coaching them, I did clinics here. I helped out at camp. I coached teams that they weren't on, different birth years and that kind of thing. So I kind of worked myself around and got a lot of experience that way. We would do spring and summer select teams, Guy and I. So I would always branch off and not just do teams that my sons were on, but I would do other age groups, just so I could get experience coaching, not just Mite and Squirt, the ages they were at the time, but I would do bantam teams and midget teams, just so you could grow as a coach. I think it's important that, you're able to coach as many levels as possible, as many age kids as possible. And from there, again, I assisted Guy at Gloucester Catholic. I think I started there around 2011, 2012. I did JV. I was varsity assistant. So that gave me another, another perspective on the game, dealing with 17 and 18-year-old kids, and a faster paced game, versus like coaching lighter squirt. So I think I kind of bookend it. I was coaching my oldest son Ryan at 05, and I was on the other end of the spectrum. I was dealing with high school kids every day. So two completely different type, teaching going on. But I think that really helped me, grow as a coach fast.
Mm. Yeah. No, that getting a taste for all of it. And so, like, did you have, like, as you kind of were going all around, like, because it seems like kind of from a little I kind of talked about that, you kind of move with the team.
Yeah.
So, like, do you have a favorite age, or is it just like
that changes all the time?
Right.
I think I loved Mike. I like kids. I think if you're going to do this for a living, full time, you have to like children.
Right.
If you don't, it's a miserable life, right? You're spending so much time of your day around little kids. I really do enjoy being around 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. Everything's positive. The sky's the limit. They all think they're going to the NHL. They want to learn. They immediately look up to you and respect you as an authority figure, as a coach. And it's just really cool to see, and they advance at such a fast rate. I think that's what's so great about it. In 6 months, a kid goes from barely being able to stand, and now he's zipping around the rink. So you feel good. You feel like you made an impact in their life. Whereas at like midget, it's much more, it's an incremental improvement in a kid over a course of 12 months. There's only so much you're going to get out of a 17-year-old, but to see a little kid grow, and I really enjoyed that. But from a coaching perspective, I think I enjoy Bantam the most. Yeah. Midget's tough. 17, 18-year-old kids can be difficult. The ones that are really driven and see college in their future, or prep school in their future, they're easy to maintain. Than some of the other kids where they're kind of in limbo, like they're at the end of the line. Maybe they're getting ready to go to college, and hockey is not a part of their future, and it's hard to keep a kid like that focused as the season winds on. You get the dog days in February and March, and that kid's kind of starts to check out. So that becomes not fun. If you have to really scream and yell to get a kid to play hard, to be motivated, that becomes miserable. But Bantam, I like Bantam. It's real hockey. It's contact. The kids are still pretty focused. They all still have college aspirations. So I think they're motivated. So I've come to find that I think I really like being that Bantam major, Bantam minor age group.
Yeah, so it's funny, like when you were talking about the 7, 8, 9s, same for me. Like development wise, I just love working with the younger guys, because it's like you said, you could just see how it just comes together, and when you especially with how important it is at certain ages to hit those different the skill sets and the development pieces of those ages, but how I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I am curious. So we'll take it from a positive spin. What would you say, like 3 tips or pieces of advice that you would give to parents that in that 7 to 10 to 12 age group, where they believe that they're going to the NHL? Which, listen, like you said, sky's the limit.
They should all believe that.
Right, they should all believe that. But but there's also, I feel like, I know I've dealt with it a little bit too. It's how do you manage that, where it's, this needs to be, yes, you need to dream and reach for it.
Yeah.
But also just like, how do you contain it in a way?
Yeah.
Do any
Well, I feel like one of the problems is the if your coach plays for someone like me, right? And all coaches are different, but I'm on them in practice, right? If they make a mistake or whatever, I'm letting them know that. So I don't feel like the parent needs to then remind the kid of the mistake in the car. Right. So if you have a coach that you're comfortable with and confident that he's making your kid better,
right,
let him do his job while he's on the ice. When you get in the car, it's all positive.
Right.
I think the only fair expectation you can have of a parent is that your kid works hard and gives his all.
Right.
And after that, it's just, hey, go work hard. I love you. I love watching you play. Right. And let the coach deal with the negative. When the kid gets hammered by the coach, not that you're hammering a 7-year-old, but if a kid, the coach has to reprimand him, he doesn't need to then hear it from the parent on the whole ride home, I feel like, And, the coach has all the control. He controls ice time. Right. The parent does not. He controls everything on the ice. The parent has no control over that. So I think when you get in with that double whammy of negativity, I think that kind of beats the kids down a little bit. And I know the parents feel like they have to get their 2 cents in on the way home and
Right.
what they think their kid did wrong. But, for the most part, the coaches, they know what's going on. They saw that your kid didn't do X, Y, and Z. Maybe there's a reason why they didn't tell them this time.
Right.
Maybe because, at some point you have to back off the kid.
Right.
You can't constantly be on top of them. And maybe as a coach you decide, I'm going to let this guy make some mistakes today, and I'm not going to be on. I'm just going to let him play. And again, just let them go out there and play and find a love for the game. And if that happens, and hopefully they have the ability, then they'll get as far as they can get with it. But we can't. And the greatest coach, the most dedicated parent. You can't. It's DNA and it's genetics. And to play college hockey in an NHL, it's like getting struck by lightning, right? All the lessons in the world sometimes aren't, and practices and all that are not going to change, what your kid has inside them. So you just want them to be whatever their best is,
Right.
And I think if we just focused on that, it'd be a much better experience for everyone.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think that's the it's if you hired me as your coach or you're playing for me in any area, right, in anything in life, it's just let them do their job. Like obviously you might have played some or you might have done some different things, but just let them do their job. And for you, it's just a reinforcement of just make sure you're doing what the coach says, and then kind of. I think that's awesome. So we'll jump back to so you went through like the different things, you kind of started figuring the things out. How did the 05 team come around? Because that team was just like it was just always like rumblings and like everybody was always like the 05 team.
Yeah.
So how did that kind of come together, and then what was just some of the things from behind the wall that maybe you can.
So listen, it's a lot of luck, right? Like I said, you can run the same drills with a group of 05s that you run with a group of whatever 2010s.
Right.
If those kids have to have the ability in them, you can't create something that isn't there. So there's a lot of luck there. I was fortunate enough that my son started at Hollydell at 5, and there was a bunch of kids his age. I didn't know it at the time, but turns out there was a core of kids his age that had that DNA, right? That had the genetics and the will, and I helped bring that out of them, but it was there, So there was I guess 9 to 10, 05s that we started with here. We played. I would always play them up. We played 04 pretty much all the way through. They played a year of Squirt Minor at the Little Flyers as an 04 team, and then we dropped back and redid Squirt Minor again. So the nucleus of kids, came from this building, played together from the time, from learn to skate on essentially, and then obviously like any great team, you're now competing, as you climb the ladder, Squirt, Pee Wee, Bantam, if you want to maintain, continue to be a top 5 team, you have to add. It's just the way it goes. You're competing against monstrous Midwest programs, Chicago Mission, the Northeast, Boston Junior Eagles, just areas with a ton of talent and kids migrating to those programs, the best players. So we added as we went, guys like Griffin Erdman came at Pee Wee Major, Chase Purtle came at Bantam Minor, kids like that, like Division I players that I did add as I went. So, that goes for any team. You're going to have to continue to add great players to stay at number 1. But it was, again, we did a lot of spring and summer stuff as well too. You see some of the pictures in my room here. Like you'll see some kids on there that played for us at Squirt Minor, Squirt Major, Pee Wee Minor in the spring and summer, and then eventually didn't come to the team as the fall team later on down the road. And looking back, that was, I don't know if I did it deliberately, but that ended up being a great recruiting tool for the player. It was like an opportunity for the parent to be exposed to our team, me as a coach, me to the player, right? So I could get comfortable with the kid, and inevitably, like those are the kids that ended up coming to play for me down the road. Everybody liked being a part of the group. I hit it off with the kid,
right.
So I was always really careful of what I brought in, because again, I think culture is a huge thing.
Right.
You can't win not like that,
right.
with a bad culture. So there was very few kids that came to the team that I didn't have experience with prior. I had coached them in at least a couple tournaments, really understood what they were about, and knew I was bringing in a good kid.
Right.
Because that was always important. I didn't want to change that dynamic in the room, even if that meant us falling back a little bit.
So I think that's a. So what would you say challenges? Because like, there's everyone kind of hears about like about how good you guys were, right?
Yeah.
But what were some of the like interesting challenges that like kind of pop out in your head?
Yeah.
When you,
Well, the number one challenge is when you're just being that good.
Right.
I think you cannot possibly satisfy everyone.
Right.
Particularly up front. When it's all said and done, there may be 7 Division I forwards out of that group. I think 3 or 4 are committed right now. 4 forwards. I expect another 3 or 4, at the least. So, how do you convince a kid that has that kind of ability to play on your third line?
Right.
And it was a real credit to those guys that were willing to accept those roles, and they still played a lot. We were so good. Fortunately, we were good enough that I could roll the lines, and everybody got playing time. It wasn't like anyone was sitting there watching, but in the end, there's 2-3 minutes left in the game, a close game. Somebody's not playing, right? And that somebody is potentially a Division I hockey player.
Right.
So it says a lot for that player that they could have gone other places and been top guys, but they wanted to be part of this. And I think that practice is important, and practicing with great players made all those guys better. But again, it's hard to tell a kid that they're all competitive, and everybody wants to be on the power play, and everybody wants to be out there in the last minute of the game.
Right.
It takes a great teammate and a pretty selfless kid to say, you know what, like and very few instances of, I never had a problem with any of the kids over those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally you might have a parental issue, right? Everybody wants their kid to play more, but I never felt like any of the kids, they were such good teammates and so supportive of each other. At no point did I ever feel like, I can tell you, a kid never came to me
Right.
and said, "Hey, why wasn't I out there?" They wanted to win.
Right.
And as long as we were getting those results, they understood and accepted their role, and they all wanted better, right? So that was absolutely the most difficult part.
Right.
And that's not to say I even got all that right, and I think second to that would be the travel. There really wasn't a lot of competition for us in this area, so we were on the road constantly.
Mm-hmm.
The Midwest teams are not going to come to Hollydell to play.
Mm-hmm.
The Boston-based teams are not going to come to Hollydell to play. You got to get in the car and you got to go to them. So on top of being number one, being having a bullseye on our back, every team is going to give you their number one goalie. Every team you play, they're shortening their bench to beat you.
Right.
So now, and on top of that, you were just in Boston for a weekend. Now you're in Chicago. Then you're in Shattuck.
Right.
Every weekend it's like we were like the Harlem Globetrotters.
When did you guys start? Like, at what point? Like, what age group did that start? Where you guys
With
had
the heavy
to,
travel and
yeah,
competition,
yeah.
probably Pee Wee Major.
Oh, okay.
We left the AYHL after Bantam Minor,
Mm-hmm.
so we played as an independent at Pee Wee Major. So at that point, it was just all about, it was less about game count and more about game quality. So our game count came down, probably, from playing like say upper 60s, lower 70s to like mid 50s.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just going to get the best teams we can. If they weren't in the top 10 or top 15, we would practice.
Right.
So we would have 5 or 6 open weekends where we would do 2-3 hours of practice versus playing a game where I didn't feel like the kids were going to benefit. At that point, it didn't do them any good to win 10-0.
Right.
So yeah, probably Pee Wee Major, but Bantam Minor and Bantam Major was pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because they needed to get the exposure.
Right.
I needed to get them. Let's face it. The northeast part of the country is where all the colleges are, where all the scouts are. They had opportunities to make the development program, to make the 40-man, to get committed. So, the focus was really on exposure,
Right.
which is not happening, here. So we were on the road a lot. I would say Bantam Minor, Bantam Major, we did a tournament here that was 6 games, but other than that, we might only played another 6 to 8 games at home.
Wow.
That's out of mid-60s. We were on the
Right.
road. As a matter of fact, to start the Bantam Major season, I think the first 8 weeks we were away 6 weekends at events. So that's intense.
Yeah, that's. So you kind of mentioned practices were like on the weekends that you weren't having games, you would do like longer practices on the weekend. So what was the practice schedule with that squad?
It would
you guys
depend.
just or three throughout the week, or were you guys?
Oh, we do 3 weekend.
Okay.
Did
Alright.
so when we transitioned over to here to Hollydell, we did 1 night a week on futures, and then we did two full sheets. The future slot was I always did Tuesday because that way they could heal up a little bit from the weekend, and then we jump on futures on Tuesday, and it was a war over there. You know, those guys. I mean, I would do 45 minutes of small games, quick warm up, get the goalies going, get their heart rate up, break a sweat, and then bang, go into small games for 45 minutes. And I wish I had videos of some of those practices because I get, you know, running the rink here. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I don't think that enough of our coaches and particularly the parents can really appreciate the value of that rink. And, you know, they just see a small rink and think that, you know, well, my kid can't benefit from being out here. They want to see their kid on a 200 by 85 foot sheet go over there and compete for 45 minutes like those guys competed. If I could show them the video of what they did for an hour over there, you know, and what they gained from that, competing, you know, in small space, battling for pucks, like, there were times where I had to reel them back because you were worried somebody was going to get hurt because they were so physical and you know, so competitive. You know, big thing was always like, you know, that I always kind of preach was, you know, it's not you're not being a bad teammate if you should every time you step out here you want to be the best guy. That doesn't make you a bad teammate; it makes you a competitor. You support your teammates, right? You don't root against them. But you want to be better than them too, right? So they took that
to heart.
To heart over there, and it was insane. I mean, our 9 team's the same way. Like if you now that they're getting older and it's becoming more physical game, you know, they get jacked up, man. They can't wait for Tuesday night to go over there and compete. And again, I think it's like just changing, you know, the sport's changing, small games and not just small games to have a bunch of guys running into each other, but small games with a purpose where you're teaching a specific skill or concept.
You got to act quicker. Everything changes. Everything speeds up.
And that's the sport, right? If you watch an NHL game, there's very little space, you know. And I think, you know, just changing, changing the way people view the game, and helping my coaches understand how to use that rink. I've had a lot of experience over there now. You know, I've run 300 practices on that sheet, so I've kind of fine-tuned it. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. You know, so I enjoy being over there. But that's not the question you asked, but we get a little bit of pushback on that rink. I think at times, people don't know how to use it yet. They can't appreciate how much it helps their team. And I bring it up often. I'll say, look, I had the #1 team in the country that used that rink for 2 years, once a week. You know, if I didn't think that worked, I would have never put them there. If I didn't think there was benefits to being over there, I would have never risked it with that group. You know, so if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for any team, quite frankly.
I think that's I know I get this in the gym a lot, is, you know, people come in and, I'll start working on little detail type things that people are like, can't we, like, I just want to do some deadlifts, and I just want to do, and it's just, sometimes you need to step away from what, you know, the sexy, and go into, just get in there and let's go hard. So I love that, that's awesome. And I do want to jump to the 09 team, but before that, give me, you know, off the top of your head, right? Just when you think back to those years with that 05 squad, what are like some of the proudest moments, or like just some of the memories that just like, you know, you're just like, oh, that's the best.
Well, #1, we had a tournament here. So being a major was tough, right? Because I had already told them that was going to be my last year. So that was an emotional thing. And, you know, as the season's going on, you know, for me, more than so much in them, you know, there's an end date to this thing. You know, and as it got closer, it became more difficult for me. You know, I was exhausted. You know, it's self-imposed pressure more than anything else. But, you know, you want to make it. It was important to me that we finished one where we started. Not that I was overly motivated by the rankings, but at that point, you had been there for 5 years, and you know, you feel like, hey, like, I want to end this thing on top, and you know, that was important to me. It was tight down to the end, right? So we had a tournament here last weekend in January. We're 1 at the time, barely. Junior Eagles are #2. Honey Baked was here. It was all top 10 teams. Mid Fairfield with Marty St. Louis, Team Illinois, and I may be forgetting someone, but it was an unbelievable event. Probably the best weekend competition this rink's ever had. So we went 6-0. We played the Eagles in the round robin portion, beat them 5-0, and then we played them in the final, and we beat them in overtime. And I think that was it. Like, everybody knew that was it.
Right.
You know, even though we still had some games after that, we played like a few more weekends. That was like our championship. We knew that, you know, we kind of wrapped it up. Again, the Eagles were number 2. You know, we had a really good year against them that year. I think we were 5-1-1 against them. So to finish them, we'll kind of finish them off. You know, that's probably top on my list. But there was the little moments, you know, over the 10 years that I was with those guys where you're like, you know, you didn't know what you had kind of till you knew what you had, right? And little successes we had where I kind of saw that it was more than just their talent. Because I don't know that we were the most talented team, you know. It's hard to say. But I think they had the most mental toughness. You know, I think when you go into events and you're playing 5-game tournaments, we would go to, you know, some of my great memories are we would go up to and we would go to Toronto every year. Look, if you're good, you go to Toronto, you go to Ontario, and you compete against their best. And I had a good relationship with Keith Primo, who ran Super Series at the time, Steve Dubinsky, guys like that. And I would tell them, just give me the toughest schedule you can. So nice. We would go to Ontario, we would get 5 games, and we would play, you know, the number 1 team, the number 3 team, the number 5 team, the number 7 team, the number 9 team. Bang, 5 in a row, you know. And you know they want to beat you. Right. They don't want Americans coming up there and winning, you know, and go up there and go 4-1, 5-0. You have to be mentally tough, man. Like, you know, you're not getting any calls, right? They're all jacked up to beat you. Right. And I think, like, that wasn't something I knew I had at Squirt. Right. You know, it was kind of like a process, right? I'm like, man, these guys are tough. You know, it was more than just ability. It was they could push through fatigue. They wanted to win so bad, from the first guy to the last guy. You know, that was something that, you know, I could pick out little moments. We could talk for 5 hours about it, and I won't bore everybody with that. But we had a 55-game winning streak at one point. No ties, 55-0. Stretched from like December of Squirt Minor to winter, like January of Squirt Major. 55 straight games.
Do you remember the team that beat it?
We lost to the Toronto Nationals. They were number 1 in Ontario at the time. So,
what was you know the score?
I do. It was 3-1. Probably worked against us. We go up. It was called Border Battle. Again, we go up. We play whatever the 5 highest ranked teams Ontario had. And the they set it up like the Nationals was the last game that we played that weekend. It was on a Sunday, and you know, social media is becoming a bigger presence at this time. This is like 2015, let's say, and somehow they got a hold of. I didn't even know that we had this winning streak. I wasn't really paying attention. I was so worried about the next game, I couldn't even have told you what our record was. And you know, someone Super Series tweets out that, you know, hey, Little Flyers 05 are heading up to Border Battle. And they've won 51 games in a row. Wow. And then when we won the next game, it was 52. They kept tweeting it out. So by the time we got to the Nationals at 55-0, it was like their Stanley Cup Super Bowl all wrapped up into one. Right. There was, you know, packed house for a Squirt game, and I remember they scored like within the first 5 minutes, and it was not like the bench cleared. They all piled up, and I'm like, wow, we're in for something today, you know. And I ran, and we you know, we kind of ran out of gas there. They fought, but they were probably a better team. But that's impressive. Like to win 55 games in a row. That's again, that's more than just talent. Right. You know, like the toughest thing to do with young kids is to keep them consistent. That's us in hockey. That's not just in hockey. That's in life. Right. You know, whether it's school or any other activity they do, like to bring it like that. Any athlete at any level, really, to never have a bad day. Right. To never just like, hey, things didn't go our way today. Like 55 in a row. That's insane. So. And I think this is kind of, again, I mentioned this kind of starting off the conversation, but there's a certain player that plays for you. Like it ends up in, like you're right, it's genetic. There's things in the person, right? But there's also a good amount of stuff that you pull out of the guys that helps them kind of get to that route, and you help them you guide them towards that, you know, that the mental toughness, that grit, whatever you want to call it. Do you have a secret sauce? Or do you just take it to WrestleMania? It's just WrestleMania that's it. I think it's important. Everything matters, right? It's definitely something I always reinforce. Everything you do matters. You can't pick and choose what matters, right? and more so in practice. So I think it starts in practice. Everything matters. If I say, the guys will tell you I'm the line Nazi, right? Or just stupid things like if I say I want all the pucks in a pile touching, I want them in a pile touching, right? For a reason. Right. You don't need to know why.
Right.
But I think there's a discipline that comes from that.
Right.
The drill starts behind the line.
Right.
Right? Not 5 foot in front of the line, not 1 inch in front of the line. Because to me, at that point, you're picking and choosing what matters. Right. The coach said behind the blue line, but I'm going to move in front of it because I don't think that matters. Right. So how do you pick and choose in a game what matters? Right? Everything matters in a game. You're going to go 55-0, right? That's doing a lot of things right. That's not cutting very many corners. Because when you get upset, when you have a down day, let's face it, it's a lot of times it's because of effort or cutting corners. Because if you're the better team, you know, why do people get upset? You know, they go into a game thinking it's going to be easier than it's going to be. They have a bad first period. The other team starts to get some momentum, right? Recipe for an upset. Goalie plays well. So I think, you know, that's the foundation of all my teams. The 09s will tell you now, like, they laugh. Mm-hmm. You know, they know I don't even need the yelling where I look over and they all jump behind the line. But and it sounds stupid, right? But I think it matters. Right. You know, that was another key thing. Like, you know, just he was crazy about doing circles. Like, you're outside the line, right? And he had a lot of reasons for that. But there's a discipline, I think, there that you're you know, you're kind of building. And again, like, as stupid as it is, you know, I think that really matters. So that's, you know, I say that a lot. I think anybody that plays for me will tell you. I always talk about it. Everything you do matters. Right. You know, you cannot pick and choose what's important. It's all important. You know, everything goes into winning a game and being the best player you can be. So that and just competing in practice. You know, again, it's not anything that anyone else hasn't ever thought of. I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I'm you know, I demand that you bust it in practice. Right. You know, every drill matters. Again, you know, just competing hard. I don't think you can mail it in Monday to Friday and all of a sudden expect to be a worker on Saturday and Sunday. You know, I think the mental toughness comes from practice, you know, those last 5-10 minutes where, you know, you push yourself and continue to push to be the best you can be. You can't tell me that doesn't help you on a Sunday when you're playing your 5th game. Like, where do you get that from? You know? So, you know, games are won during the week, not on the weekend.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, as you're talking about that, remind me of the Navy SEALs. You know, you got guys going into areas where, you know, there's all kinds of weaponry that are going on. So they hit a door, they know first person that gets that door opens that door. There's no questions asked. There's no like ask. It's just there's one leader that goes in. Once they don't know what to do anymore, the next person that makes a move, they just follow. And I think kind of come back to what you're talking about with culture is, you know, it's understood that there's no time to think extra. It's just if it's said, it's done, and there's no like discussion on it. It's whatever, just because you trust each other so much that you just know that no one in this squad will want to do anything but the right thing for the squad. And I think that's a really cool. It's interesting because it's just like just something small like pucks not touching and the whole thing. So no, that's funny. Cool. All right, and then so now. You know, it's funny. I got to work with your 09s last year, and you know, I mean, listen, love the squad. That was some of the fun. We had so much fun in the gym from just all the different things that we did, and there was a lot of compete that we did in there as well. But you know, I think you know the team is just starting and everything like that, and they're a bunch of beasts as it is. But so we won't get into too much of that side of it. But I do want to kind of touch on. You know, so last year was the first year with them, right?
No, that's my 4th year.
Oh, with the 09s?
Yeah.
Is it okay. So,
last scored minor.
Okay, and then so this past year, you know, there was a couple games which I don't understand the rankings at all, because it's like you play a team that's number 1 because with the Rock or the
XHA.
So with them, they're, you know, you guys split. Basically, wasn't it 2-2? Yep. So that part I don't understand how that all goes. But what are some of the similarities that you see with, you know, with the 09 team to the 05 team? And again, obviously there's this whole process that kind of gets there.
Yeah.
What are the similarities, and what do you?
Not many. It's a much different team. Mm-hmm. You know, the 05s, back to the 05s. I didn't coach a ton. You know, I worked them hard in practice. They were super skilled. I didn't want to put them in a box, right? I wanted them to just go play. I didn't have to spend a whole lot of time worrying about little details. You know, I wanted them to think the game and figure things out on their own. We were good enough that we could win that way. I think that's the best way for a kid to develop. You know, is not to be overcoached, particularly like squirt and pee-wee. You know, midget, junior, obviously professional hockey. There's much more strategy involved, but I think for young guys, get the puck, go make a play. Obviously, there was certain, you know, hockey concepts that they need to know, and you're teaching them as they go, right? Certain things you demand, but you know, I want a kid to get a puck and just go be creative. You know, I think that develops a better player than, hey, I have to get the puck and do this, 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 and this, and you're developing robots. You know, they were talented enough that really the only thing for me was to make sure that they were getting their all. And if they gave their all, we were going to be okay. The 09, so it's a lot more coaching. You know, we're not as deep, but I think the culture is equally as good. You know, it's a really tight group of kids. They fight for each other. You know, they respect me. They respect each other. They work hard in practice. They're all maximizing their potential, right? In the end, I just want them to be whatever I'm not. It's not about comparing them to the 05s or any other team in this rank or in the country. It's being the best version of yourself, and I think they take that serious. You know, again, the culture's king, and I think there's a lot of similarities there. You know, again, are they going to have as many division? Are there going to be as many Division I commitments off the 09s as the 05s? Very unlikely, but you know, as a coach, I get just as much enjoyment out of coaching the 09 group as I did the 05s. Because again, all I ask is that you come and give it, you know, whatever you got, and I want to make you whatever your best is, whatever that is. And at the end of the day, I'm comfortable with that. It's not about, you know, a kid reaching the development program, you know, versus playing at rowing. You know, I want, if that's his max, and that's great that I did my job. So they're very similar that way. Kids are very dedicated, and you know, my role here, you know, I was full-time here only for 2 years with the 05 team. So with the 09s, you know, they started at Squirt Minor. I was already a full-time employee here. So they've really been able to benefit from the amount of ice. And, you know, again, just playing for the hockey director, and I'm here, and, you know, hey, coach, there's 6 of us. A lot of them live in town. 6 of us want to get on the ice today. Bang. They go over to Futures, and they play 3-on-3. Like, you know, that's they're really benefiting from that. You know, they're in the gym with you. Like, it's a really dedicated group of kids. So, I get just as much out of it, to be honest, you know. But there's definitely more coaching. You know, I have to coach my way through games more than I did to just say, all right, next line with the 05s. I could put any kid in any situation with that team, and it was probably going to end up being the same result. With this team, I just got to be a little bit more careful, you know, who I put with who, and, you know, certain teams and certain lines, you know, you have to coach. I can be on my toes a little bit, which is fun. I like that.
Yeah. No, listen, I came out to some of the games, and it's just it's fun to watch. Like some of the stuff that they set up is just like, whew.
Like, listen, you talk about little things mattering. Like, XHA is a phenomenal team. You know, more talented than we are. The game that we beat, the first time that we beat them here, again, we scored I think 2 or 3 goals in the last 5 minutes of the game. You know, it would have been easy for them to. We played it close, right? It was 3-1, I believe, late in the game. You know, 5 minutes left, and you know, we could have walked out with a moral victory. Hey, we played the number 2 team in the country. We lost 3-1, but you know, again, like they played the full 45 minutes. I think we scored with like a second left to win the game. You know, and you know, that just doesn't happen, right? I think that's 4 years of pounding home. Everything matters. You know, you play hard to the end, and you skate hard to the end of practice. Translates into that game. XHA took their foot off the gas. You know, you steal a game, right?
Yeah. It's not over till Valerie sings.
Yep.
Yeah. No, listen, Tom, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
doing this.
Thank you.
I'm excited to put this out, because I think that there's a lot of just really great stuff that you've been doing throughout, and I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, the continued success in the process, and but that's a wrap.